So I guess for me initially, how does one become this, and how do you even think about becoming a Packers historian?
I had worked for newspapers in Wisconsin for more than 35 years, and a good share of that time was spent either covering the Packers regularly, writing columns about them in some capacity. Plus, I had grown up, and so I started going to games in the 50s, lived through the Lombardi years, and I had retired from the Journal Sentinel in 2007, and the Packers approached me and about 7 years later and asked if I wanted to be the historian. I was interested in becoming the team historian because they were beginning planning for the 100th anniversary. So I guess it happened somewhat by default, but um, I I had started the Packers Heritage Trail, created the Packers Trail Heritage Trail in Green Bay. That was a factor in their consideration, and also had written a lot of history pieces about the Packers.
It was an easy fit, which sets the stage for this weekend. And I saw that you published a column on the website. But if you would, why is this rivalry what it is? Is it just because they've played more than any other two teams, or is there more to it?
Well, I think the fact that the rivalry dates to 1921 and they played every year since except for two um, is certainly a factor. Um, but it's mostly because of the history behind it. It's not, I mean, the Cardinals and the Bears started playing a year earlier, even, I believe. It's just the fact that the rivalries continued. And they were the two most dominant franchises in football for the first, certainly you could argue the first 20 years, maybe the first 40.
Did and I think about what Hallis and Lombardi are these two kind of patriarchs. Does that help to set up kind of these like two kings on each side of the chessboard between these two teams?
Well, if you were going to start a Mount Rushmore of pro football, George Halas would have to be on it. Vince Lombardi would have to be on it. And Curly Lambeau would be a candidate to be on it. So I guess that's a starting point. And then you think about all the great names, and they're not just memorable. They're not just some of the biggest names. They're best players in the history of the sport. Players like Walter Payton and Don Hudson, but you know those football sounding names like Hinkle and Butkus and Ditka and Nitschke. Uh, I think that all adds some spice to the li rivalry.
How does Chicago appearing to be hit on Caleb Williams, appearing to hit at least in one season on Ben Johnson, maybe rekindle the rivalry or at least that side of it?
Well, as I wrote this week, unless you're on Social Security like me, you might have a hard time understanding why this is such a great rivalry. And a big part of it is the fact that since 1968, uh, the year Lombardi stepped down as coach of the Packers, Hallis, if it wasn't his last year, was near the end of his coaching reign. For 26 years after that, there was never a season where both teams had a winning record. That's sure to dampen a rivalry. And as of last season, that's 67 seasons. And there were only five times where both the Bears and the Packers had winning records in the same season. So, and then you factor in that the Bears dominated for a while, late 70s and 80s, into the early 90s, and then the Packers have dominated since. So there haven't been a lot of big games, been a lot of contested contests, but still, I think the players, um, I don't know if hate's the right word, but certainly have a dislike for the players on the other team. And, fans certainly do. Well, Illinois, Wisconsin, the border. And um, there's just a natural rivalry, I think, between the people living in the two states. So that's all part of it, the fans' involvement. Uh, Despite the fact that maybe they haven't played a lot of hype games, a lot of games that have been on prime time.
Does it, as I look in the last 5 to 10 years, we have uh, on one hand Rogers, scoring TDs, flashing his belt, telling fans he owns them. That much, very much being a trope. Then even just this season, DJ Moore wearing the and Caleb Williams wearing the cheese grater hat after they beat the Packers a couple weeks ago. So certainly the player versus player hate, or at least antics, are very well seen now. Is there any evidence of that hate versus one another back in the 50s, 60s, kind of early, I guess, portions of this rivalry?
I think in the periods where both teams were good, that would be the 30s and 40s. Uh, there was a lot of mutual respect between the two teams. I think that was the case again in the 60s when Lombardi and Hallis were coaching. I mean, Lombardi had great respect for Hallis. Um, but there have been periods when one dominated the other, and particularly post World War II. There were a lot of brutal games, a lot of serious injuries, a lot of cheap shots. And that was again true during the Ditka Gregg years, 1980s. Probably remember incidents with the Charles Martin incident when he slammed Jim McMahon to the ground. Uh, Mark Matsui getting blasted out of bounds well after a play, as I recall. Um, I remember when the Bears beat the Packers. It was the worst defeat in one of the worst defeats in Packers history, maybe the worst. And the Bears, you don't remember the score? Was it 60-3? Let me look that one up so I can just use the score
I
and
was going to
say,
say, I don't have it offhand.
let me just check real quick. I think I can find it. Oh, yeah, 1980. Bears beat the Packers 61-7. And I remember Dan Hampton's memorable quote, I covered that game, was uh, too bad we wanted to beat those pricks 100-0. Or 100. Too bad we wanted to score 100 against those pricks. I mean, the quotes like similar to Rogers, I own the Bears, have fueled the rivalry as well. And there have been a number of such cases.
When I think about other rivalries across sports, I mean, Yankees, Red Sox, Ohio State, Michigan is a good one too. If whoever wins that game, it almost means more than the national championship. Um, this is just a wild card game we're looking at this weekend, but does the magnitude of that game match that kind of level of hatred where it almost matters more than future success?
Um, it did at one time. Um, it's a good question. You know, there are rivalries in the Yankees, Red Sox, baseball, some college football rivalries, certainly Ohio State and Michigan, that have stood the test of time, but they're very limited. To me, what makes a rivalry special more than anything is tradition. And tradition involves a lot of things. So um, my the rivalry I'd rank number one of all is Army Navy. I mean, to me, that's really a special game, and it's the one college football game of the year I make sure I watch.
I can't disagree with you there. Just a couple more for you. Where do you think this game ranks before it's even played, in terms of the importance of history? I mean, I know what this will be, what, only the third time that they've met in the playoffs, but considering where these franchises are heading, both appear to be ascending. Where does this rank in the future?
Actually, I mean, I've been f following and going to Packer games since the mid 50s. Um, in the years since, I think there have been two games that have been billed as two of the biggest in the history of the rivalry. One was the 2010 NFC Championship, which turned out to be a good game, led to a Super Bowl for the Packers, but Haney ended up finishing the game at quarterback. So how special a game was that? The other would be the 1963 showdown when the Bears ended the Packers' 2-year reign as NFL champions. And that's the game I remember the most. I mean, that was in the blackout days when games weren't televised in the hometown. There were thousands of people in Chicago who drove the 75 miles or whatever to wherever they had to get to watch that game. That was just a huge game. And when you think about the record, I mean, the Lombardi Packers were 11-2-1, and Lombardi at one point said he thought his 63 team was going to be the best. And they didn't even win a championship. So I lived through that, and I mean, I think back to all the regular season the games the Packers have played since, and I'm not sure any was ever uh, more ballyhooed than that one. But then I think you have to go back basically from 1929 to I think it was 45, 46. I mean, 11 of the 17 NFL, uh, 11 of 17 years during that stretch, either the Bears or Packers won the NFL championship. So basically, you had almost 2 decades where every game they played was virtually a championship game because the team that won was likely to win the NFL title.
Off of that, what would be your message to fans of both teams about how rare this meeting is, considering this magnitude?
Well, it's such a big game because it's a playoff game, and that's it's the only it's a third postseason game, right? And yeah, it's only the third postseason game. Playoffs are watered down now from back when just either the Bears or the Packers were going to be in the play in the postseason, uh, depending on who won the conference or division. So, I mean, from that, it's obviously a huge game because of the stakes involved here. I think, but I also think that there's reason for hope among fans for both teams that this rivalry has gotten kind of a shot in the arm. It's needed to get back to the stature that it long held. And I mean, if this it turns out to be a third down to the wire game, with both teams looking like they're built for the future, this could be a restart, just exactly what the rivalry needed. And I think if that happens, younger fans will get to appreciate what the rivalry is all about.
And then off of that too, you talked about tradition being a key piece of what makes a rivalry. And uh, it's probably putting the cart before the horse. But with Chicago looking at getting out of Soldier Field, perhaps building a dome stadium somewhere here or there, insert the name of the suburb. Do you envision that having any sort of an impact uh, on the meaning of this rivalry moving forward?
It could conceivably. One thing you have to remember, the Bears didn't start playing in Soldier Field until the early 1970s. So, in the rivalry salad days, the Bears played in Wrigley Field. Either way, though, you're talking about stadiums, ballparks with great traditions. And Lambeau Field obviously has that. Uh, a new stadium for the Bears wouldn't. So that could be a factor. But if both teams are playing well, games mean something. I don't think it'll diminish the rivalry too much.
I think that's about all I have for you. Is there anything else that you would like to add that I did not touch on?
I don't think so. Just the only other thing I'd add is that the Bears and the Packers are the two most tradition-rich teams in the National Football League, and nobody else is even close. I mean, the Giants are probably a distant third. The Cardinals would be if they had stayed in Chicago, but they've had so many homes, it's hard to count them. Uh, so really, it's the two most tradition-rich teams in the NFL that are going to be playing Saturday night.
Okay. And then one quick follow-up to that. What do you think Hallis and Lombardi would be thinking if they could wrap their heads around the modern era of modern broadcasting that this game is going to be played in a bookstore streaming service?
I don't know if the streaming would bother them so much, but just the issues that Lombardi had at Super Bowl one and all the press conferences he had to hold and all the distractions to getting prepared for a game, he'd probably be insufferable. And Hollis wasn't any different. I mean, they were both just obsessed with winning. That's why they probably the biggest reason for their success. Um, what together, I think they won 12 NFL championships. Speaks volumes.
It really
Um,
does. Yeah.
that's twice as many as Bill Belichick. And you throw in Lambeau, Lambeau won six, Lombardi won five, and I think of the Bears nine, Hallis was head coach for seven. That's 18 championships, NFL championships between those three.